New York City, October 24, 1944. The war in Europe was reaching its blood-soaked climax, and America's newspapers were filled with headlines about battles in France, the Pacific, and beyond. But buried deep inside the pages of the New York Times was one that stunned readers who noticed it. German ex-officer held as Nazi spy. Beneath that quiet headline lay a story more shocking than any battlefield report. A father and daughter living quietly in the United States, accused of serving Hitler's Third Reich. Their names were Simon and Marie Koedel, ordinary citizens by appearance, but secret soldiers in a war of shadows. Simon Emil Koedel was born in Würzburg, Germany. Like many immigrants of his time, he came to America in search of a new beginning. In 1904, he stepped onto American soil, restless and ambitious, and in 1908, he volunteered to serve in the United States Army. By 1911, he had earned his discharge and a reputation as a hardworking and disciplined individual. He took work as a projectionist in the early movie theaters of New York, a man who could blend in easily, his German accent softening with time. By 1912, he became a U.S. citizen, swearing allegiance to his adopted country. He married Anna, a fellow German immigrant, and for a while his life looked perfectly ordinary. But somewhere between the flicker of film reels and the whispers of European politics, Simon's loyalty began to shift back toward the fatherland he had left behind. During World War I, Simon began secretly transmitting shipping information to Germany. He believed he was serving a higher cause, not betrayal, but duty to his birthplace. In 1915, he even sailed to England under pretenses, claiming to be an innocent traveler, while in truth he gathered intelligence for Berlin. Arrested by British authorities and deported, he returned to America humiliated but unbroken. The following year, he slipped back across Europe and was commissioned as a captain in the German army. When the guns of World War I finally fell silent, Simon returned to the U.S., a man with two identities, the loyal American veteran and the hidden soldier of the Reich. For decades, he lived an invisible life. In public, he was a respectable family man, even volunteering as a four-minute man, giving patriotic speeches to encourage Americans to buy Liberty bonds during the war. But under the surface, Simon was always listening, always watching, always ready to serve Germany again. In the 1920s, he and Anna took in two orphaned children, Philip, age 5, and Marie, just 3. They raised them as their own, but by the time the world drifted toward another war, the Koedel family would become something far darker than a home. By the mid-1930s, Hitler had risen to power, and Simon saw in the Führer's vision something he believed Germany had lost: pride, unity, and strength. In 1934, he and his new wife, Hulda, traveled to Germany under the guise of attending the Oberammergau Passion Play. But that trip was no innocent pilgrimage. It was a reconnection with his old handlers. Soon after, Simon wrote letters directly to Ernst Putzi Hanfstaengl, a close friend of Hitler, and even to propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels himself, pledging that he and his family would remain loyal to Germany. His words would become a prophecy. Simon's stepson Philip soon went to prison for robbery, and with him out of the picture, Simon turned to his foster daughter Marie, young, intelligent, and strikingly attractive, to carry on his espionage work. In 1936, at just 18, she sailed to Germany for secret Abwehr training, learning how to send coded messages, gather intelligence, and report without being detected. When she returned to New York 6 months later, she wasn't just a daughter. She was a spy. Before we wrap up, I'd really like to know where you're watching from and what you know about more spies like the Koedels hidden across America during World War II. Drop a comment below and tell me if you'd ever heard about a quiet father and daughter living ordinary lives in New York who were secretly working for Hitler's Third Reich. And if these untold stories of World War II fascinate you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you'll never miss the next deep dive. Every episode takes serious time and research to get right, and knowing that you're out there learning and supporting truly makes every hour of it worthwhile. That same year, Simon was officially registered as Agent A2011 of the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service. He received $200 a month, a small fortune in the late 1930s, and clear orders collect industrial and military intelligence across the United States. His cover was perfect. As a member of the Army Ordnance Association, a trade organization connected to American military suppliers, Simon had legitimate access to facilities, documents, and officials most civilians could only dream of. The FBI never suspected him. He was, after all, an aging Army veteran with perfect papers and patriotic credentials. Koedel's genius was not in gadgets or secret codes, but in observation. He could extract valuable data from the most mundane sources. Once, he clipped a single newspaper article from the New York Times about a new scrambler telephone installed in the White House for President Roosevelt's secure communications. That small piece of news found its way into German hands, and by 1942, the Reich had a system that could intercept and decode transatlantic calls between Roosevelt and Churchill within hours. That one clipping changed the course of intelligence warfare, and it had come from a man who seemed invisible. Simon's work grew bolder. Using his AOA membership, he visited military plants across the country, even gaining access to the top-secret Army Chemical Warfare Center at Edgewood Arsenal. When guards refused him entry twice, he complained directly to Washington and was personally granted a guided tour. His arrogance made him dangerous. He collected ship schedules, munitions data, and export permits. He even convinced Senator Robert Rice Reynolds to send him reports from the State Department's Munitions Board. Over 600 reports made their way from Koedel's hands to German intelligence, many delivered in plain white envelopes to the German consulate in New York. He was hiding in plain sight, a proud man who never even bothered to use a false name. He didn't need one. In his mind, he wasn't betraying America. He was fulfilling a higher mission for Germany. His letters to government offices were filled with flattery and suggestions, and underneath, subtle clues about what he was really after. But his world began to crumble not because of his arrogance, but because of his daughter. In 1939, Marie met a man named John Walters, an aircraft worker at Republic Aviation. Walters fell in love quickly, and in January 1940, he proposed. But Marie broke off the engagement soon after, confessing that she and her father were German agents gathering information and that she couldn't abandon their mission. Walters was horrified. He went straight to the FBI, reporting every word. But the Bureau dismissed him as delusional, another heartbroken lover making wild accusations. In a bitter twist of fate, Simon himself later walked into the FBI office to complain that people were spreading rumors about him. His confidence fooled even the best investigators. Still, suspicion began to spread. Citizens forwarded Simon's erratic letters, written in broken English, to the FBI, claiming he sounded pro-German. By late 1941, Special Agent C. Lester Trotter was assigned to follow him. For days, Trotter shadowed Simon through the streets of New York, on subways, ferries, and into shadowy docks along Brooklyn's waterfront. On one gray afternoon, he watched Simon carry a folded newspaper under his arm, walk into an abandoned storefront, and leave empty-handed minutes later. Trotter investigated, but the trail went cold, until Pearl Harbor changed everything. After America entered the war, the FBI intensified its domestic counter-espionage efforts. The German consulate in New York was raided, revealing a web of contacts, aliases, and coded correspondence. Simon's name appeared again and again, but there was still no hard proof. His mail was monitored, his phone calls tapped, yet he continued to operate confidently. He even wrote to Major General Thomas Terry, criticizing U.S. Army statements about venereal disease. Letters so odd and confrontational, they drew direct attention from the military. When Terry demanded the FBI take stronger action, the Bureau reopened its investigation. By 1943, agents had pieced together a clearer picture. Simon Koedel and his daughter had been sending intelligence overseas for years through mail drops in Spain, Italy, and Portugal. But without the original documents, prosecutors hesitated. Hoover's FBI gathered reports, but Simon always stayed one step ahead, moving from New York to West Virginia under an exclusion order, and continuing his correspondence as if nothing had happened. The break came in 1944. not from the FBI's fieldwork, but from a stroke of luck. Inside the ruins of the German consulate, agents uncovered 17 documents referencing the Koedels. Among them were letters from German handlers confirming payments and coded instructions from Berlin, signed by Johannes Bischoff and Nikolaus Benzmann, Simon's Abwehr masters. Even more damning were checks found in Dallas, ordered by Johannes Bischoff, Bremen, and addressed to Simon himself. The evidence that had eluded investigators for years was finally in their hands. But fate had one more twist. The statute of limitations for peacetime espionage was set to expire in October 1944. The FBI and Justice Department raced against the clock. Then, in an astonishing coincidence, 3 painters cleaning out Simon's old theater discovered hidden letters, evidence of communications with German intelligence, corroborating everything Walters had said years earlier. With just days to spare, federal agents arrested Simon and Marie Koedel on October 23, 1944. Their trial the following February drew little national attention, overshadowed by the war raging overseas. But inside that courtroom, a story of loyalty, manipulation, and deceit unfolded. Walters testified against his former fiancée. FBI agents described Simon's strange habits and coded letters. And then, in a move that shocked even his own lawyer, Simon stood and changed his plea to guilty. Perhaps it was guilt, perhaps defiance. No one could tell. Marie, weeping, claimed her stepfather had forced her into espionage, that she wrote his reports under threats and beatings. The jury believed her, but only slightly. On March 1, 1945, Judge Robert Inch delivered his sentence. Simon Koedel, 62 years old, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Marie, just 26, was given 7.5. As Simon stood silent in the courtroom, the man who had once sworn allegiance to 2 nations now had neither. He had served Germany, betrayed America, and destroyed his family. The FBI called him one of the most successful and least suspected spies ever caught on U.S. soil. When the war ended later that year, the world quickly forgot the Koedels. They faded into the archives, buried beneath the names of saboteurs, double agents, and captured U-boats. But their story remains a haunting reminder of how ordinary faces can hide extraordinary treachery. Simon and Marie Koedel were not master spies in the romantic sense. They were citizens, neighbors, a father and daughter who believed they were serving a noble cause. Yet in serving the Reich, they betrayed everything else. In the end, their story isn't just about espionage, it's about how loyalty can twist, how ideology can blind, and how even the most mundane lives can become the battleground of empires. On that quiet October morning in 1944, when the New York Times printed their names, America learned that the war was closer than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just fought in Europe or the Pacific, it was fought in the hearts and minds of people who lived among them. The enemy, it turned out, sometimes lived next door.